This is the UX Institute podcast, and I'm Mark Swain, founder of UXI. We are working really hard at bringing you the most useful guests delivering insights to support your daily product and UX workflows.
It is more about thinking about the experience of what might happen in this specific situation. In my book, I've sort of boiled it down to a single principle that you need to be able to build trustworthy AI systems, right? And there is different components of trust.
In today's episode, we're diving into the dynamic intersection of UX, AI, and product design with Akshay Kore, author of Designing Human-Centric AI Experiences. We discuss upcoming AI support tooling and new skill sets researchers and product designers will need to hone to work in an AI world. Listen in to understand how future UX and product design workflows will become more commoditized by AI and how product team roles will need to adapt more quickly. Do designers really need to create mock-ups and prototypes anymore? Do designers need to spend as much time in Figma? And how good does your prompt articulation need to be? Let's get started and unlock the potential of AI in product creation. Hi Akshay, thanks for joining me today on the pod. We've been meaning to get together and have a little chat about AI and UX and all that good stuff. I'm really grateful you're here and sharing your knowledge and talking a little bit about your book also, which is an excellent read for any product manager or UXer out there to really start to get to grips of understanding the usefulness around AI and their workflow, workload, execution and projects, etc. I will share some of the book notes and link to the book in the pod notes later. Maybe you could give us a little bit of your background and how you came about to kind of piece this great book together around designing human-centered experiences with the AI lens and why you felt it was important now to kind of get this down.
Absolutely. First of all, Mark, thank you so much for inviting. Super glad to be here. Just to give you a bit about my background, I grew up in Mumbai in India. Have always been into designing for people in general. Like my background is in architecture. So I studied architecture and then sort of moved to computer science and then human-computer interaction eventually. While I was at school, I did a couple of projects in machine learning there. Post that I was with Microsoft. I worked with their AI research group for a bit. Where I designed experiences for voice and different kinds of AI-based workflows. Post that I worked with a bunch of startups. I was recently at Observe AI, it's an AI startup in the contact center industry. And right now I'm at Suki. I am super into AI and design. I've been working in this space for quite some time. And what I realized is that a designer's or a PM's understanding of AI is very different from an engineer's understanding of it. And often what happens is that because of this dissonance, a designer might think up of some idea that they want to build, but it might not even be possible to build given the current nature of the technology. A lot of the ideas in AI are generally considered futuristic, and you end up not marrying the future with the reality, and which is why lots of designers are frustrated when they work with AI teams. So I basically started teaching a few designers about how to work with your engineers and how to work in this space, how to think about the technology, how to marry your user experience principles with the current technological, I wouldn't say limitations, but opportunity that's there. An underlying core motivation for me is that I have always felt that AI will be inevitable and important. And because it is going to be inevitable, it needs to be designed well. It needs to be built for people, and it also needs to be ethical and trustworthy for us to be able to, for humanity in general, to be able to use it well. So that was essentially my core motivations for getting into this space. I thought it was important enough. Nobody was doing anything on it. I thought, why not?
Yeah. And so with that, over time, this is how you kind of came about to piece this book together for the product designers and UX designers and even product managers out there. Who else does the book speak to?
It also speaks to any founder who's trying to get into the AI space and does not know too much about artificial intelligence or the technology underlying it. This is a good primer. It's not a technical book, but it will give you enough terminologies to get started.
You hit off the fact around the book speaks to founders and designers and PMs alike. With that being the case, as so many new startups out there are AI led in everything that they're doing. However, you're not always convinced of the proposition or the offering that's coming through in the product and how useful the actual AI piece of the experience is and how that's being translated into something that's more automated, streamlined, or useful for the front end user. I was kind of trying to address there where you see the misconceptions or the issues around the magic wand approach when really maybe the software is just being nudged a little in improvement only through the use of AI.
A lot of founders tend to start with the technology first and then try to figure out a use case around, okay, I have this cool thing that this model can do. Now let me figure out a use case for it. It might work in certain cases, but in most cases, I find that if you start with the people first, you basically go through your process of like talking to your users, figuring out what are their pain points and trying to solve for them. In certain cases, AI will make sense. In certain cases, AI might not make sense, right? There's a cost to building anything with AI,
Sure.
which includes like a monetary cost. It includes an effort cost. It also includes like your expertise that is needed to build something like that. One thing to really evaluate when you're trying to build any product is to go in with an understanding that you're trying to solve the problem for a user and then see if it makes sense for us to use AI at all. If you're building an app that prints documents, you don't really need an AI.
Yeah, sure.
But then there are certain cases where AI will be able to give you superpowers. Like, let's say you don't know how to create images, a DALI will sort of help you articulate your thought. Once you articulate your thoughts, it will help you build the right kind of image. That is a skill I never had before, but this AI enabled that skill for me. So those kind of things are like true use cases for AI, but like a lot of the concepts that I see online seem to be like, one, they're trying to be rappers on top of GPT, rappers on top of existing technologies, which is fundamentally not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not really solving a problem for somebody, then we probably need to rethink about why you're even using AI for something like that.
And when we look at, if we look at this from a kind of UX lens or a product designer's lens or a PM lens, their mission is to create and design and validate an experience or workflow that seems worthy of executing with some AI layer in it. However, the differentiation points and the value that the AI brings is not always fully understood by users. It's not always necessarily needed either. They may not see the value in it. So from your first comment, you were kind of mentioning around this that maybe AI is not always the answer to the workflow. It may not streamline or automate something or provide an experience that's truly useful. So from the designer's lens, would you agree that that's their kind of role, is to kind of pitter that out, validate further, go deeper, and get quite a realistic and prioritized lens around what actually is useful if we are going to be an AI-led workflow?
Yep, absolutely. And a good way to like really think about from a designer's lens is to first like go back to your basics. Basically, say that, hey, now I have a user and they have this specific user journey. Like this is what my user does in their day. For example, let's say I'm building something for lawyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the lawyer is my user. I want to first figure out what does their life look like, right?
Yeah.
And it might look like they do lots of meetings in the night. Depends on the kind of lawyer they are. It will also depend on the kind of profession they, like specialization that they have. Like if they're a finance-based lawyer, I'm not familiar with law, so I'm just
Sure.
But if I was designing for that, I would like sort of talk to a lot of lawyers, start mapping out their user journeys, and eventually what happens is that you end up figuring out like a common pathway for a lot of these. So I can assume that lots of lawyers read a lot of documents and they try to figure out minute details from that jargon that is used as points for a case for the defense, for example. Now that is a very good use case for AI. Like AI can sort through millions of documents quickly. It can pinpoint things for you. It can also summarize things and sort of give you, okay, like these are potential points. But you would not have an AI lawyer as such. You might have a lawyer that uses AI more, right? So now that you sort of figured out like a product that could potentially be big for lawyers and they could use it daily. So instead of like them reading through documents, they just feed it to an assistant and then ask the assistant, hey, did this happen in this case? How does this case relate to another case that was 10 years back?
I guess in terms of trust factor there too, depending on the AI or the interface that a lawyer might actually use to summarize, to ingest data and spit back out some sort of summary that's prompt led in some way to receive a verdict on something or a viewpoint on something. It's also treading on trust. It's treading on reliability, competency, and where does that stop? So that's really interesting. I guess, are we going to see lawyers in a courtroom using laptops that are ingesting audio and spitting back direction and providing advice and guiding lawyers, right? I mean, where does it stop, right?
Also, as like a client, would you trust a lawyer like that?
Right, exactly. Interesting. So also, I just wanted to kind of push on this a little more. So when I look at some of the current platforms that are being launched and workflows that are being launched, it is getting easier and easier for designers to create designs, to push out workflows. We're quite templated up at this stage, generally, in terms of software. And then you see the whole rollout of new platforms like Galileo and ChatGPT's Vision Modeler and multiple others, even down to some key plugins in Figma that are spitting out wireframes in seconds in terms of, hey, build me a landing page for a HR SaaS platform, and it will spit out some good ideas that the designer can leverage in some ways. What's your thoughts around that in terms of generative AI and how that's going to affect the designer's workload, both from a gen perspective and how that's married into their current daily workflow?
Before I get into that, like I do want to call out, like right now design is very commoditized. In most cases, you might not really need a designer for a lot of these things. You might just do with a product manager with a good sense of design.
That's interesting.
So, for example, like key workflows, like building login pages. The one has figured it out. You don't need to redesign them it again. You might want to change some colors and stuff, but I could still like provide that AI with a brand guide and say, that, okay, this is my brand guide. We want a login page. Give me 40 options. I have to choose between 40. It will be easy. Like you don't really need a designer to do it. Eventually, we might get to a stage where like you can also do the handoff to a developer. At some point, you'll get to a stage where you don't even need a developer to do it because it's easy code. Anything that is super simple for humans will probably be a good use case for AI. The hard part in like the AI spitting out 40 options is choosing one option out. Like, how do I know which one is the right one? And you could also go deeper into that and say, okay, I'll push it out to 10,000 users, do an A/B test of 40, I'll see what performs the best. That might eventually lead us to like building very bland interfaces. I don't know, maybe it won't, but my assumption is that it will lead to like everyone's interface looking the same. At that point, you might need a designer back too.
Yeah, I've thought about that loop in terms of generative AI spitting out typical workflow dashboard screens experiences that we all know today. Very linear. It might get to a state of heavy blandness.
Yeah, which already happens with images, right? Like you can already tell when an image is AI generated.
Sure. And it's an interesting one. I've had similar thoughts where we're going to go through a cycle here where the design role might be diluted a little bit and commoditized and made eventually spring back again in terms of, you know, being more individualistic, more deeply personalized from a UX perspective, that human lens will not go away. AI can't provide that. I still think that's there. It's hugely important to commoditize software building today anyway, but I think as we go through this loop, that is something that I have thought about actually myself, that's going to come fold back ways. Interesting. So you hit off some things there about the PM almost being able to conduct most of the design workload. Do you feel that a little? Do you see that?
So it's not truly happened yet. At least in my day-to-day, you seem to still need a designer because the PM does not know the software mainly. It's not really a judgment thing because I think like with enough iteration and enough experience, most people have good enough judgment of what a good user experience looks like. Designers might be able to like articulate it better, or like they might be able to create variations and know why something works or not. But internally, when you have tried to like think of some user experience, you know, when you see it, you sometimes feel that it's not working, and sometimes you feel that its work. When I say PM, I'm saying like any smart person. It could be the designer who does all this, but a relatively smart person can prompt an AI well enough. So again, prompting is a skill, right? I need to be able to articulate what I want. I need to have clarity of thought.
Yeah.
Need to be able to tell this AI what I need well enough for it to make it accurate enough for what I want. So I think like articulation, clear thinking will become more important. Creating of assets is going to become a rudimentary skill.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, no, those are some key little areas that are not discussed enough or articulated enough for designers and UXers today about how they do hone their articulation skills to prompt based. If they're getting into that array of Gen AI that it's going to support their workflows, how do they actually make it useful as opposed to just AI spitting back random potential ideas or kind of very light support, right? I don't think designers understand that today. I think that's very much a key area as well. I've thought about that a lot too. Just to wrap up on that point, I actually do feel that PMs can actually direct a lot of UX and UI today. You know, when we do get into the gen space more and more, we're going to see design systems being plug and play scenarios where handling in Figma will be greatly reduced for designers. It will be so smooth that design systems are literally picked off a shelf and inserted with very little interaction from designers. They'll have some job there, I guess, for customization or some areas, maybe so. But I would see this being harmonized more and more. In most scenarios with new software build, most people on the team, particularly the PM and the designer, can see most of the product already in their head. They know what screens are going to look like. They know what onboarding looks like. They know what core feature flow should be. It's getting easier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might get to a stage where like articulation of what you want will be super important, because again, like figuring out what the user problem is, like talking to your users, understanding the user journey, like the lawyer example I gave, right? It is not possible to build that product without talking to lawyers or like figuring out what their workflows looks like, and it could be like different things for different users. And to your point of like design systems, they are already commoditized. Like if you most startups today will use it's like how LLMs are used, right? We have a foundational LLM and you use drag and then you sort of build a wrapper on top of it. It's similar in design also, right? You have a foundational design system, you change a few colors, you change a few icons, it starts looking like your product. But underlying, you will use a React Native framework, it's like a Bootstrap or something else.
So, what does that mean for the product designer or the UX researcher? What does it mean about their roles? We talked about new skills being honed in our prompt articulation. What else is in there? What else should they be considering or thinking about in their roles?
One is having very good foundational skills in design, like having that eye for design is important. Then a designer will often be able to tell what is good design over what is not better than others, folks who've not really focused on that skill. If you've focused on that skill for most part of your life, then you're probably good at like making a judgment call on like which one is great. I think like designers will become more like directors and editors. You will basically direct the AI to say, okay, I want this specific experience to be like this, but then there'll be like this final touch that you will give. It will be like, okay, like this is almost there. We are like 90% there. Let me go into the file now, change a little bit, and then like push it out to the next step. You might see like designers not doing too much of the grunt work, more of the direction and little bit editing.
Sure. Visit uxinstitute.com to sign up to our new newsletter. UXI will be sharing best-in-class UX research practices as well as in-depth interview content so you can excel at your career in UX. It kind of leads me on as well to, from an empathy perspective, how is this going to play out for designers in the next 5-8 years? How are they going to feel about their roles? Are roles going to be completely redefined? You know, we talked about prompt articulation again. What should they be learning and accepting now about their career trajectory and their role and the differences in their role in 4 or 5 years' time?
I do think about this question a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of the bad side of it is often inevitable. Like you really can't stop it. Like it's just market forces. It's just cost reductions and like It's just capitalism will like kill your job essentially. So I feel like designers need to start being a bit more humble about their jobs, rethinking what their jobs are supposed to be. Like your job is not to make a Figma mock. Your job is to design an experience. A lot of designers end up feeling that since they know a particular software, that is a job, but your software is not your job. Job is to be able to design an experience. Now, being able to design an experience, if we go deeper into it, it means I know what good experience looks like. I can explain to a team what that good experience looks like. I can communicate well, and I can also do the other aspects of design, which is testing it with users, gauging like subjective feedback, like doing interviews, user testing, prototyping, those kind of things. If people start focusing on deeper skills like this and not on like the generalized skills which are like can be handled by a design, and if you can imagine an AI can do it, it can probably do it at this point because it's just a matter of somebody trying to focus their efforts in that direction.
Yeah, very good. Okay, some other areas in your book are really interesting to me because they play with me all the time when building out new experiences and working on new startup products all the time. You talked about the competence factor of AI, reliability, predictability, benevolence, all these factors for designers to consider and think about. If we could talk about some of these areas in how designers need to start considering this more and more as part of that experience you mentioned. At what stage or time should they be considering these factors? At the very start, during the design process, and also how important are they? Because let's try and use an example here. So let's try and use maybe like a med tech app that's going to help communicate to a patient how their heart is performing and whether they need to de-stress to reduce heart rate or whatever it might be, or whether they have blood fluid volume issues. And the app is going to talk to them in terms of when they need to take their next medication to reduce the fluid volume, something around the heart. And in there comes trust, reliability in the app. There's some form of AI layer that might pick up on the condition on the patient through a wearable or something, and it's guiding the user as to what to do. Think about that from an AI factor. From a designer's perspective, there's a lot to consider here in terms of trust, how the app is communicating to the user around their condition without creating anxiety, without creating other issues like that with the patient over time. There's quite a lot more there for designers to consider, right?
Absolutely. Like you just pointed out, like this probably needs a designer, and it's not really about creating mockups anymore. It is more about thinking about the experience of what might happen in this specific situation. In my book, I have like sort of boiled it down to a single principle that you need to be able to build trustworthy AI systems, right? And there is different components of trust. So you trust a system if it is reliable. If a system is not reliable, you will probably not trust it, and hence you will not really use it. Right? So for example, Google search was not reliable, you would not really use it anymore. You would use something else. Similarly, for a situation like a medical device, if the medical device is not reliable, you will know eventually, and you will know it is not reliable through multiple ways. One is by your own usage or the usage of your peers, others who have used it and they've given feedback that it is not reliable. Right? Reliability is the main thing. The other is where in their user journey are they? So, for example, if somebody is going through a heart attack, right, that is probably a situation where you need to alert them immediately, induce a sense of emergency, while also taking care of like making sure they're calm and they're able to follow the steps to not make it worse anymore. You would also start questioning, should an AI really do all this? Right? Because it's too severe, it is too important, it's a life and death situation. In this case, what is the best thing for an AI to do? It's probably to like sort of call a doctor and that one automatically.
Yeah. So simple call outs, simple recommendations or call outs at a base layer only.
Yeah. So your Apple Watch, when you fall, they have a fall detection system, right? It's the similar idea. In this situation, I can assume you're not able to do things, so I can automate a certain task on your behalf, and you have given me permission to automate the task, which includes calling your family or alerting your family or alerting a doctor as well. the way to probably like design for this would be to really play out that situation by articulating it, by saying, okay, this will happen. Okay, they are walking on a stair, they're suddenly facing high blood pressure, which are all signs of getting a heart attack. It will happen. You also need to consider if there is a history of stuff, things like this that have happened to this person. Is it the first time or has it happened before? If it's happened before, they probably know what to do. If it's the first time, you need to like do something more.
And should the product already know that?
Yeah.
And guide them pre anything happening. Of course, you think about the Apple Watch scenario and other devices like that. That can bring that to your attention pretty quickly. Yeah. And I guess in terms of how that's designed or comes across screen-wise is crucial, right? In terms of how they interact with it, read it, the language used, the words used. That brings all the trust and reliability into the use case, right?
Yes. And in this case, I could very well use an AI, right? Like if there is an AI that sort of can build out the UI for me, and I can just tell it, okay, like this is my scenario. I want you to. There is one use case where the user knows there is a history. In one use case, there is no history. We want to, in the history case, we want to make sure they're calm and they know the vehicle to guide them to the next step. So you might want to spit out like the UI for this, and then you can say, okay, like now make it a little less anxiety inducing, but still they need to act on something. So use colors that are that enable them to act, but words that reduces their anxiety. Now, this is a subjective thing that I've said, but you could imagine ChatGPT like spitting out something out.
Absolutely. You know, we're already seeing that with multiple different other tools other than GPT that are able to spit out screens and workflows like this automatically. And that's just going to accelerate incredibly fast over the next good few years, right?
Yeah, and as a designer, I would be happy to hand this off to an AI. Like I don't have to sit on Figma and do all this.
Okay.
I can just articulate what I want and it gives me things.
Yeah.
And it enables me to like test it quickly. Like let's say you're the PM and I'm the designer, right? We could just be sitting in a room and we could be discussing. You're not waiting for the designer to go back and create the mocks. The mocks are there. And you discuss, okay, like this does not work. Let's try out something else. The mocks are there. It's like you probably like iterate it 100 times in an hour, which would have been impossible otherwise.
Time for designers in Figma will hopefully start to reduce in terms of hours spent laboring over screens. Yeah.
And once you're like, let's say, fine with something, you might say, okay, like let me go in and like just fix things. Corner radiuses, like whatever I use.
Yeah. It's interesting. You hit off a point earlier there as well around this, that if we see what the power of Gen AI is going to do for product designers now and soon, more and more, there is that deeper human layer that AI just won't be able to fully answer in terms of the deep human nuances that you're going to discover through the interviewing process, through the reality check of their environment and daily lives, about how they're going to go about using the software and all those other factors that come into play. It may creep in someday to Gen AI that it will improve around this and bring these factors in, spitting out the design around this for consideration and the reasoning behind it. But I think it's the layer that AI just won't be able to produce as deeply as needed now.
I would say like now, maybe in the future, it might also. Like it's...
Yeah.
We probably shouldn't ever say it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, sure. Of course. Yeah. It's just, yeah.
But I think like human judgment will be important for quite some time. It might reduce in value. Let's say like your AI is equivalent to like a Johnny Ive. At that point, probably the AI's judgment will be more important than your judgment. Like if that was the case, you'll probably listen to that AI.
Yeah.
It all comes down to like you listen to that AI because you trust the skills of this thing. It has given you enough confidence over multiple usage that it provides a good enough answer. And it is reliable. It works mostly. When it doesn't work, it sort of tells you that it did not work. You're able to give it feedback. All of these factors like sort of play into like the trustworthy nature of an AI system. That is what you want to design for.
Is there any difference in how designers should be testing AI-driven workflows or user experiences for software? Typical SaaS, like if we think about typical usability prototype testing that we all go through and have done for years and building new product. Are there any other deeper differences that designers should be considering from an AI lens in terms of types of usability testing? Should they be digging deeper on their ethics, on different areas as they discuss screens and workflows?
Before writing the book, I was of a different opinion. Then I used to think that okay, when your prototyping techniques might not change as much, or like your user testing methods might not change too much, right? But there's a project called Chat Dev, and also it's also called AutoGen, in which you basically assign different LLMs different roles, and they basically talk to each other and sort of figure out an answer. You can imagine like their AI creating a prototype for you. You have another AI agent that is assigned the role of a judge or like an evaluator. You have another AI agent that is assigned the role of a design director. You have another AI agent assigned the role of a product manager. And you basically tell this team that, hey, we have 5 options. Why don't you like look through these 5 and tell me which is the best one out of these, right? And give me a framework for why you think that is the case. And it's very interesting. So you will see that this team will start talking to each other like humans would, and they might come up with a report that will tell you like, okay, like they have done their user testing. Or you could like imagine like you have 1,000 users, you have like data about 1,000 users. You build a persona of 1,000 users. Each user is a agent. And you basically test it with that persona instead of the actual user, which is almost a true representation of that person. And you could get the results of the test in a few hours. And you probably test it with like 1,000 personas of. Yeah, I think it is possible. If you are leading a team like that, you might still have some doubts about it not being a real user who tested with. So it's more of a human thing. It's like, as a human, I would not trust it. In that case, I might be like, okay, I am sure you've done it with like these 1,000 agents, close representation of your users. But I don't trust it. I would rather trust like you going to 10 users and talking to them. And so always a human output will get more weightage in situations like this versus like a truly machine output. Possibilities are endless.
Yeah, exactly. I know you can really spiral down speaking to this stuff and pinpoint the future and how it's going to flow, but how useful that's going to be is impossible to determine now, right? But they're all really good ideas and it's hitting us so fast. It doesn't seem too far-fetched to speak to it, right?
If you give a small team a week, they would probably do this.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Great. So I was going to just lastly kind of speak to summarize around the future for designers. I know we've hit off all this, but to kind of pull this together, I kind of wanted to get your kind of final wrap up sense around what does the designer's role look like in 5 years' time? What are they doing on a daily basis? What's their core activities versus what they would be doing now in Figma and other workflow activities? And how have they got there? What type of education? Should they be much more involved in learning, upskilling, self-educating on AI? What should the designers be doing today and UXers?
The core skill of a designer will eventually be judgment. And what I mean by judgment is being able to choose between infinite variations that an AI will generate eventually. And you are able to develop your judgment when you are good at your core skills, which might be visual design or interaction design, whatever is your core skill. You really hone into that. You learn more about it. You practice it yourself. But eventually, you can think of your role becoming like a director and editor of these experiences. So you direct what the experience looks like and you edit certain parts of it. But AI does a lot of the grunt work. You choose what looks good, what makes sense. You hone your own skills. So there are 2 parts to this. One is your own judgment, and the second is your ability to communicate with an AI. I can judge things, but I also need to be able to tell the AI what to change. And that comes with a little bit of articulation skills. Maybe prompt engineering is something that designers might want to get into because it's not like a coding skill. It is more of a communication skill. It's more about writing and less about programming. So you don't need to know if, else, variables, etc. You just need to know how to write well and how to communicate well with an AI system and understand nuances. So I think like a designer might evolve into something like that.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you think designers or UX leaders should be fearful?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the horse carriage moment. It might not feel like that for some time. But you'll already start seeing it like in the industry. Like the number of UX jobs have been reduced. Like the people at the top are thinking about these things. As soon as you become a cost center and not a profit center, unfortunately, because capitalistic societies will optimize for profits or like optimize for shareholder value, and that will come through cutting costs. Like it might feel wrong ethically, morally, it will feel wrong, and it is wrong, but it is inevitable. Whoever is doing a low skill task, when I say low skill, it means like a repeatable task, some sort of calculation and generation of some non nuanced artifact that is going to have serious competition from AI. You can imagine like you're a CEO of a $1 billion company, you're spending, let's say, like 10 million on your designers, and somebody comes to you with a proposal that says, okay, like give me $1 million and I can reduce the cost of your design team by 5 million. It could either be like half the people or like 1/10 the people, but each of those 10 people, 1/10 people can do the work of 10 more designers. I can imagine myself sort of being able to do a lot of that. And now I don't need a team of user researchers to sift through lots of conversations. I could build a user research agent. I think like being good at your skills is important, but also be aware that the world is changing.
Yeah.
I think you need to adapt to it also.
That's great. There's some really great call-outs there. It's a really good way to summarize, to wrap up the conversation. Just around the differences in the role, the upskilling, the self-education, the kind of jolt of awareness or urgency to be able to shift your career and move in a different direction and really be super mindful of what your role might look like or not look like and over the coming years. I think that's really valuable insight there. Thank you for that. So I just wanted to wrap up and I wanted to say thank you for your time. It was great getting into some of these deep conversations around AI, UX and design and how they're affecting us all and will in the future. There's so much to consider. Your insight and your book and the areas that you've hit off have just been excellent. I would strongly advise any designer out there to get into your book at some point when they can in their workflow. The name of the book is Designing Human-Centric AI Experiences. Akshay has covered so many areas that are really good for designers and UXers in terms of building product today. Thank you again for your time, Akshay. Really, really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. It was really nice to talk to you. These were like some really thoughtful questions. It also made me think. So thank you for that.
Remember, the future of product workflow is being redesigned under our feet daily, and you are part of it. Thank you for listening to the official UXI podcast. We are so grateful you are listening to our content. We will continue to bring you great guests and topics in UX research, product management, and product design. If you enjoyed our discussion, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. You can find links in the show notes to Akshay's book on Amazon and follow him on social channels. Bye for now, stay curious, and keep experimenting.